Europe's new supply chain rules are targeting human rights violations, putting Asian businesses at risk of losing market access if they don't comply. To help us understand this, we have Natasha Peacock from Boston Consulting Group. Natasha, how are companies now approaching supply chain regulations?
Well, Sess, it's a very good question because the regulation is actually quite new. And so there are a lot of gray sort of areas. But as we try to navigate, we are starting to see clear what companies need to do. This supply chain regulation is not a box ticking exercise. It's about action, about impact, and making real change on the ground. And the regulation will be looking for that. The regulation is actually very tightly worded on the expectations of companies and scope. And so it's been specifically designed to ensure that big companies can't just shed responsibility onto small companies or companies in the supply chain. So I'd say with CS3D, with the Due Diligence Directive from the EU, we're really moving from an era of risk shedding to risk sharing. And I would say that where companies do collaborate, though in good faith, there is space for it in the legislation. But if you are not able to show that you've taken real action, it will come back to hurt companies.
On that note, how can companies go beyond just following the rules to prioritize human rights?
Yes, I wish more companies would be doing more about that. I'd say, first of all, actually meeting the regulatory requirements will be a big step. And there are not many companies that are actually ready for it today to truly have visibility throughout their supply chains. And as you know, with CS3D, it is all the way, we would say, down to farm, factory, or field, with the need for transparency. When companies that feel that they have that, obviously the next step in terms of stepping beyond compliance is really actually to see doing good as an opportunity for business. And this is our preference. We call it being a socially transformative business. And it's really making profit, but with a purpose. So if we think about compliance being the norm, the new normal, really a competitive edge is how do you do good and do well at the same time. And the way we like to think about it is you have three different areas of action. One is within your organization. So diversity being the most common thing to look at. And we know that diversity drives sort of outlying positive performance. So you need diversity to have that extra strong performance. You do need other factors, though, to enable the performance, such as the right conditions around it, the safety, psychological safety, so to speak. Within the supply chain, we are looking as well at what people can do or companies can do with ensuring living wages and safe working conditions. But these are the norm. When you have living wage and safe working conditions in the supply chain, it will lead to fewer disruptions and sort of much more resilience in your supply chain. Now, the third aspect is obviously your products and services, so new areas for revenue. And there are many ways to look at this, and this is very individual to the companies and sectors, but this is not about just welfare, so to speak. This is really about finding new areas of profit with additional margin that you wouldn't have accessed otherwise. And we see it in banking, we see it in agriculture, we see it, frankly, in most industries, that it's just about serving underserved segments, possibly with a shift in your current distribution model. But I think the bottom line here is that business leaders shouldn't be distracted from profit generation, but they need to shift to maximizing profit through purpose.
But is this expected to affect a lot of businesses? Which industries are most at risk for forced labor?
Yes, so it's an interesting one. There are certainly some industries that have a higher risk of forced labor, being tainted with forced labor. But I first want to say that actually forced labor is in every country, irrespective of the country's wealth. We're not talking small numbers. If you look at Walk Free, which is an NGO, and the ILO, their estimates are actually about 17.3 million in private sector forced labor and 3.9 in state-imposed forced labor. So it's everywhere. However, to directly respond to your question, the industries most at risk from the ILO as well is services, it's manufacturing, it's construction, and it's agriculture. And you can see here that it tends to be low-skilled labor, and it tends to be often migrant labor. And We know as well that migrant labor is 3 times more likely to be enforced labor than non-migrant workers. So addressing migrant labor for Asia specifically should be one of the first areas to look at within your supply chains.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Natasha.
Thank you, Cess. Thank you for having me.
Once again, that was Natasha Peacock, Partner and Associate Director for Socially Transformative Business at Boston Consulting Group. For more news, visit AsianBusinessReview.com.